Today's episode is brought to you by Modern Grower. Modern Grower is your source for time and labor-saving farm tools, such as the Paper Pot Transplanter, Quick Click Seeder, and the Jang Direct Seeder. Turn laborsome tasks into free time with tools by Modern Grower. If you look back at your career, many countries, Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Pacific Islands, Africa, South America, the U.S., what stands out in terms of things that blew your mind related to mushrooms when you saw them? You're like, I never expected this.
Well, a number of things. In certain forests, the lack of mushroom diversity. In certain forests, the overabundance of mushroom diversity. I'll give you two examples. So we did the first large NSF grant that I had to support the work was to do the mushrooms of Hawaii. And so we went out to in Hawaii, and we spent most of our time in the native forest areas, up in the areas in the Kipukas on the Big Island, and whatever little patches of remnant native forest area were around. And I was really surprised. I shouldn't be, but I was surprised at how little mushroom diversity there was in the area. And it makes perfect sense because those islands are a long ways away, like 4,000 kilometers from the nearest large landmass. So anything that was there had to get there. Either it got there on its own through spores flying through the air, or it got there in mud on the feet of migratory birds, or it got there and was salt tolerant and lived on a log that floated from the Pacific Northwest and landed on the islands of Hawaii, where the natives made their big redwood canoes out of some of those few things. Mainly, they probably blew there by the air. But as I just mentioned, with mushroom forming fungi, if you're going to find a mushroom, it had to have had a mate at some point. So if spores are going to blow from the mainland of the Hawaiian Islands, you need compatible spores to blow. If a single spore blows over there, it germinates, it grows, it's going to grow a single nucleate mycelium for a while, but it's never going to form mushrooms until it finds a mate. So you'd have to have two mating compatible spores to blow together, or at least land close together somewhere to mate and then have it. So you shouldn't be surprised that there was so little, but you can walk in those forests of Hawaii, the native forests, for days and find only a few mushrooms and a few species of mushrooms. Maybe 80 to 100 species of mushrooms is about all we ever found in a native forest. You go into the tropics where there's an equal amount of diversity of plants, and you can find 200 species of mushrooms in an afternoon, without different species of mushrooms, without a problem. And you can walk down a trail one day. Another thing that surprised me, walk down a trail one day, and when you're looking, I'm pretty good at finding mushrooms. I mean, I can see, if you get the eyesight, and you walk down that trail, you see all the mushrooms that are around, and you walk down the next day, and right there in the middle of the trail is a mushroom, a big mushroom that wasn't there the day before. The speed at which some of these can grow, the turnover. That's why there's almost no topsoil in tropical forests, wet, really warm tropical forests. There's almost no topsoil like you get in the temperates. You can walk in our pine forest, and you have pine needles that can be 6-8 inches deep, a lot of topsoil. You get into these tropical forests, and maybe an inch, if you're lucky, a couple inches deep, and then you're down to rock. And that's because there's so much diversity in the insect diversity and the fungal diversity, consuming any organic that falls to the ground and just converts them into their, breaks them down and converts them into their own bodies, in their own fruiting bodies, etc. And it just goes by really, really fast. And in the tropics, you have some species of mushrooms that I've done a lot of work with that form these nets, these rhizomorphic nets. They form these nets, which is just a coil of mycelium that's darkly pigmented to keep it from drying out and to help avoid UV radiation. And they grow these long threads like horsehairs, it's actually called horsehair fungi, through the canopy. So you can be walking through and you think it's a cobweb that your face just ran into, but it's not. It's a web of aerial mycelium. And this aerial mycelium traps the leaves of trees that are falling before it hits the ground. And then the mycelium grows into them in the air in these nets. And it's beating the competition to the resource by catching it in the air before the leaves fall to the ground, where it's consumed by all the other fungi that are there. So it's really, I mean, it's really cool strategy to get your resource really quick. And then a lot of these fungi as well, they're leaf endophytes, we call them. They're fungi that grow inside, so that the spores of the fungus germinates on a new leaf that is just forming. Okay. And then the fungi grow into the leaf and live for a certain period of time between the cells of the leaf, not doing any harm to the leaf or the host, maybe providing some antibiotics or antivirals to it. So maybe serving some nice beneficial function. And then they sit there pretty much dormant, or mainly dormant, until the leaf dies. And then when the leaf dies and falls to the ground, the fungus is already there inside the leaf. It turns into a saprotroph, and it starts to break down and kicks into gear and starts to break down and decompose that leaf. So it's, again, beat the competition to the resource and is already there, ready to eat a leaf just as it's dying. So pretty cool. That's another wonderful strategy. And a number of our fungi do that. A lot of ascomycetes do that. There are some basidiomycetes that do that, some mushroom forming fungi that do that as well, that we now know about because molecular biology allows us now to sequence all the genomes inside these leaves. And we see a lot of these different species of fungi living happily inside a happy leaf of a plant. That's why I say all of our plants are communities. They have all these different fungi living in them, living on them, etc. Yeah.
If you enjoy this podcast, then be sure to check out Farm Small, Farm Smart Daily, where you can get your daily dose of farm wisdom. Tune in every day to learn the latest tips, tricks, and stories from the world of farming. Whether you're a seasoned farmer or just getting started, our podcast has something for everyone. Join us as we explore topics like farm business, crop planning, soil management, and tools and technology. Start your day off right with Farm Small, Farm Smart Daily, available on all major podcast platforms. Don't miss out. Subscribe today.